Good afternoon, YouTube. This is your guy J Crew to you. Getting back with you with another video here on this lovely Memorial Day here in 2021. I wanted to bring you all my thoughts on another video I've been looking on doing in terms of a gentleman who recently passed. His name was Mr. Paul Mooney. He was a legendary African American comedian who has been around for many decades. He most notably worked with Mr. Richard Pryor, who y'all know is another legendary comedian, on some of Richard Pryor's routines early in his career back in the 70s, 80s, etc. And Mr. Paul Mooney, it's my knowledge of him and my awareness of him is kind of interesting. He's one of these guys that even though he had been around for many years, I really didn't become aware of him until like the recent decades. And I mean, that may sound odd, but I guess because I didn't just I wasn't aware of how widespread his influence was, and the fact that he wasn't like the guy in terms of being like Richard Pryor for many years or any other comedian that he helped breed along the way. I just wasn't aware of him. He was born in 1941 and recently passed away a couple of weeks ago here in May 2021, reportedly of a heart attack. And I first became aware of Paul Mooney, like I said, a couple of decades ago. And I want to say it's when he started appearing on the Chappelle show. He had a couple of segments called Negro Damas and another segment called Ask a Black Dude. And it was one of those situations where it was kind of tongue in cheek. Where there'd be somebody asking him a question when he was on that Ask a Black Dude segment. He would give like a real Afrocentric, a real anti, authoritative kind of answer. It was just kind of funny to watch. And but at that time I really didn't research him like that. I said, okay, that dude, whoever that guy is, he's kind of funny. I want to say over the next several years, I began to look into Paul Mooney even more. For whatever reason, I guess my interest kind of peaked, or should I say, it began to peak in him. And so I said, let me research this guy, because I kind of remember that stuff. And I guess it was partly due because the Chappelle show had went off, and I of course, he wasn't available to do that anymore. And so I began to research him, and one of his most known comedy albums that I became aware of was something called Race. And I want to say he did like in the early 1990s, or early to mid 1990s, around the O.J. Simpson fiasco that took place back in the 90s. And I mean, even on the album cover, it kind of told you how Paul Mooney was gonna come. He on the album cover, it was him and 3 or 4 other white guys, and he's on this track where you would see sprinters compete at, and the white guys are kind of like crouching down like in the sprinters pole, like they getting ready to run a race, and Paul Mooney kind of standing up with a gun. I just thought it was hilarious just by looking at the cover. But I began to listen to the album, and when I listened to this album, I'm like, man, this is a masterpiece. Like I said, I really wasn't a guy who was big on comedy albums, and so I really wasn't, a big purchaser or even a follower of comedy albums. But when I listened to this, I just was laughing. He was talking about a wide variety of issues. I think he was talking about Lassie on there. That was his favorite show. He was talking about, white women getting killed in movies and stuff like that. He was talking about how lame some of the movies that were coming out were. I think he mentioned the Edward Scissorhands as one of the lame movies that white people be writing. And, I can't reiterate the jokes in his tone, but it was just funny. I mean, I would heavily suggest you check that out. If you have time to check out, something on Paul Mooney. And he did more, I guess you say stand up specials, I believe, over the next several years after that. But I had the opportunity of seeing Paul Mooney in person in the city that I stay in. He came here to perform with another legendary comedian who passed away named Dick Gregory, and they did a special. I know Paul Mooney went on first, and Dick Gregory went on second. And they both were kind of coming off top of the head. And I thought that was relatively impressive. Paul Mooney was, he was good, but it wasn't some of the best I've ever heard from him. But Dick Gregory was funny, but I had the honor of seeing him, and I remember they wouldn't allow us to take pictures in there because I guess they wanted to throw them off or whatever. So, I think if you even kind of brought out your cell phone, they would tell you to put it away. And I really hate I couldn't get, any footage of that while I was there just myself because, given that this guy has such a long history in the comedy business and he's so well respected, it was a disappointment that I couldn't do that. Something else about Paul Mooney. I remember also becoming more aware of him when another comedian, another white comedian, I believe his name was Michael Richards. I want to say he was on that show Seinfeld, I believe, way back when, like in the 90s. Michael Richards was a guy, he hadn't done stand up in years. And I want to say it was like the mid 2000s when this controversy happened with Michael Richards. And what happened was that Michael Richards was doing a stand up. And I think he kind of had a brain fart, or he got stuck in the middle of one of his routines, and out of nowhere he just started saying the N word just over and over and over again, and even a lot of the crowd goers were just kind of shocked, and of course because he was a known performer, it was a huge controversy that was all over the news stations and stuff. But he had to come out and apologize, and one of the people they interviewed was Paul Mooney. And Paul Mooney was talking about it, how disappointing that was for him to see that. And he said that he could tell that it just wasn't funny, that he kind of got stuck. And I think part of it was because Michael Richards had taken off with doing comedy, stand up for a while, and all of a sudden he was just kind of thrust back into this position again, and he's doing stand up. And so Paul Mooney, I think, felt like that was one of the reasons why he kind of didn't smoothly make it through his set, because he hadn't been out there doing stand up for a while. And I don't think Paul Mooney made this next comment during that same interview when somebody was interviewing him, but it may have been maybe a few years later or something, or either not long after that. But what happened was Paul Mooney kind of got to this point. He was like, "I'm gonna stop using the N word," because I see how hurtful that is. Because early in his career, he was known to use it like it was going out of style, and he would just kind of use it as a point in his comedy routine. But when this incident happened with Michael Richards, it made him kind of change his mind about using the word. And he said, and I quote, instead of saying "What's up, my nigga," he said, "I'm gonna say what's up, Michael Richards." And I remember he said that. Like I said, I don't know if he was doing a live TV segment. He may have been on the radio or some other medium when he did it, but I thought it was funny. And that just kind of gives you an insight to his attitude, and how he still kind of made it funny, but he kind of was, it really kind of garnered a change in him. I don't know if he stuck to it up until the end of his life or whatnot, but I distinctly remember him saying that, sort of going through this period where he said he wasn't going to use that word. I want to say he was doing some stand up some years later. He was doing a stand up, and he accidentally used the word. And I read somewhere that he ran off the stage. He was kind of upset and embarrassed. But he came back on. He finished his set, but he kind of just, kind of blurted it out by accident. And so, just some of the more newsworthy things I remember, with Paul Mooney. And unfortunately, you don't want to get to cover something like this at all about somebody. But over the last few years, if you follow Paul Mooney, he was dealing with a controversy. He was dealing with an issue that had popped up about his life. There's a YouTube channel called Comedy Hype, and they were interviewing this guy. I think he was one of Richard Pryor's old bodyguards, Rashawn Khan or something like that. Rashad, or either Rashawn Khan. And they were just going over some memories that he had about Richard. And one of the things he mentioned, and it was a shocker, and nobody really kind of saw this coming. He said, "Yeah, man, like back in the day, Richard had said that Paul Mooney raped his son. Paul Mooney had raped his son, Richard Pryor Jr." And everybody's like, "Huh? What?" it just kind of came out of nowhere, but it started a fire that kind of made Paul Mooney kind of lay low, really up until the end of his life. Because I think, of course, Richard Pryor, he couldn't come along. He's been dead for years, but his son, I think, came out and somewhat commented on that, kind of said it was true. Who was the person that was allegedly raped, and I'm gonna use the word allegedly because I wasn't there. Um, but also, I think one of Richard Pryor's either ex lovers or ex wives, he came out and said that yeah, that was true, and it really hurt Paul Mooney's career because I think not long after this jumped off, he through his publicist said he gonna be taking a break for a while, and over the past few years his health declined as well. He began to deal with I believe dementia according to some of his family members, and they would say I think not long after this controversy came out as well, two of Paul Mooney's sons came out. They did an interview, and it may have been on that same channel, Comedy Hype, and they basically were defending him. They were like, "No, he liked women. He had women everywhere. There's no way he would do stuff like that." Just defending him as best they could. And I don't know how effective it was, but Paul Mooney stayed just kind of like out of the limelight, and also he, like I said, he was dealing with dementia. And so when I recently, heard of his passing, within the last few weeks, I wasn't surprised because usually when somebody begins to suffer from stuff like that, there's usually no coming back. And so, also, I think there was another guy on YouTube here, and he's another mixed comedian. Although he mainly is kind of associated with being black, his name is Pierre, and he's a comedian. I think he appeared on special like BET Comic View a couple of decades ago. I think he's been in movies here and there. I think he just goes by Pierre. And he was talking about how bad a shape Paul Mooney was in. Because he said when he went to go visit Paul Mooney, I don't know if it was the last several months or maybe a year or so, he had talked about how when he first started talking with Paul Mooney couldn't remember who he was until maybe like several minutes of the conversation. He said certain things. And so that just gives you an idea how bad a shape he was in. So, I don't know whether the, sexual assault, rape stuff was true towards Richard Pryor Jr.'s son. Richard Pryor's son, Richard Pryor Jr. But I just want to pay my respects, to Paul Mooney. I thought he was a very funny man. And it's one of those things where I have an attitude of better late than never. Because like I said, early in his career, and probably in the middle part of his career, I really wasn't even aware of him until like later. And later being the past couple of decades, I really wasn't even aware of him. I believe he was 79 years old at the time of his passing. I like to say, rest in peace, Mr. Paul Mooney. You definitely were a funny guy. And for anybody who's not really aware of who he is, look him up on YouTube and get ready to laugh. It's your guy J. Crew to you, coming at you again on this lovely Memorial Day here in 2021. Y'all have a good time. Be safe.